As COVID cases put a strain on hospitals, some families may be looking for some alternative birthing options. Maybe they're looking at additional support or looking to birth at home. Well, sometimes moms-to-be may need someone to answer some of those questions, provide some reassurance, and help them through that process. So today we're going to be talking to a doula about her work, her passion for that work, and hopefully answering some of the questions that you may have if this is an option you're considering, or maybe it's something you've heard about and you're saying, I wonder what they do. Well, today we're going to hopefully answer some of those questions and provide you with a little bit of information that may help you along your journey. Today, we're joined by Rhonda Fellows of the Oily Doula. She's a birth doula, a childbirth educator, offering services in person and online. Thank you so much for joining me today, Rhonda. Tell me, why did you become a doula, and what do you love about your work the most?
Why I became a doula is always the question of the hour. It happened to me. That's my answer. I definitely stumbled across it, and some friends said, "Oh, you should be a doula." And I said, "A what? A doula? You should be a great doula." I said, "A what? What do you think be a doula?" And I said, "I don't even know the word that is coming out of your mouth right now." It kind of happened, and then I started doing research from there, and then I ended up going to a friend's birth locally, which I had been to a good friend's birth back in Ohio. But I didn't know what a doula was back then. So it's like, I'm just going to go and support her, and then I'll hold her leg, right? Isn't that like what we see in the media? Just hold their leg. But then the first birth I went to, after I started researching doula work, it was the thought of, oh, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then at the end of that birth, after things had settled, the midwife said, "So how long have you been a nurse?" And I said, I work in HR.
Yeah. When you're kind of trying to figure out what is your calling, or what is this thing I'm supposed to be here to do, you kind of keep bumping into people and experiences along the way that keep sending you back to that space. Did you kind of feel like that too?
Definitely, because I've always been, well, some would say bossy. I'm going to say a nurturer.
Yes.
And also, so in a lot of friendships or relationships, I've always been a helper, help some friends with childcare or helping raise their children when they were really little. So, and I ran an after school program for a while when I lived in Ohio. So it's always been something with family and children as a part of my work. Even the nonprofit I worked for when I was in HR was all about teen mission trips. It's called Youth Works. And so it's always been a part of me. So this just made sense to bring a lot of that stuff together.
And in the childbirth process, especially if a mom is going through it for the first time, nurturing is probably what you need. You don't know what you're going through. You don't know if you're doing this or that right. And so through your work, you're able to be that support and reassurance for other people.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. A big part of what I do with birthing families is education, right? And a lot of times people think of doula work as, oh, the person's in labor, go to the hospital. However, that could be, there might be doulas out there that only do birth. I don't know any of those people. But our work starts with when they hire us. So that could be, I've had repeat clients who said, "Rhonda, I just left the clinic. I am pregnant and I just need to make sure." Okay, so did you tell your partner yet? "No, but I just want to make sure that you have this date." "Okay, yeah, but so you didn't tell your partner?" "No, I have, but I just want to make sure you have this date." So there's those people.
Yes.
Love dearly.
Yes.
And then there are people who've heard of doula work, and then they always knew they wanted one, and so they'll hire us somewhere there in the middle. And then there's those people who no one told them about doulas until the end of their pregnancy, and they're getting a doula. And then there's another group of people who never heard of doulas before, and they're actually in the hospital laboring, and a hospital staff will say, "Hey, we have a doula in the building. Do you want some support?" And they're like, yeah. So it's the spectrum, of when people get a doula. But if you get a doula in pregnancy, a big part of what we do is education.
And for those folks that are meeting you for the first time, whether it's in labor or they're learning about you later on in their pregnancy, I mean, what are some of the questions that you get? Like, do they ask, I mean, what is a doula? What are you going to provide for me that maybe my doctor is not going to provide, or maybe a midwife is not going to provide? And then talk a little bit about how what you do is different from a midwife.
Right. So it is different. That is one of the big questions, because people think we are midwives. And a lot of midwives used to be doulas. However, the role of a doula is not doing medical tasks. And so your midwife or your doctor or the nurse, it's the person that's taking your blood pressure. It's the person that is monitoring the baby's heart rate and taking vitals for you. That's the person that's doing all the medical tasks. Doulas also don't catch babies. I mean, I would never let a baby hit the floor. That's what I always say to families. If it was happening really fast and we didn't make it, I would help you catch your baby. But in general, as a doula, it's not my role to catch a baby, because that's a medical task, or unless you're catching your own baby. So my role is, like I said before, education. So education can look like, Rhonda, I don't have a provider yet. I don't know where I'm having my baby. Okay, we can work through the process of, what are you hoping for your birth? And let's find a provider team and a birthing location that fits that. It could be that type of education. It could be the basics of childbirth education, right? I teach lots of childbirth education classes. And so that's talking a little bit about pregnancy, talking about the birthing process, talking about medications and interventions, different positions to birth your baby, different coping and comfort measures for the birthing process. So education in that respect, as well as in the postpartum time. You know, those first 2 hours after a baby's born, there's a ton of things happening and it can feel very chaotic. So, you know, educating people about what happens in the immediate postpartum, but then what's happening once you take this baby home, because that's the goal, right? If we have a baby, we want to take our baby home. And so many people plan to birth their baby, but not to take them home. And so they don't have a postpartum plan. And I believe as a birth doula, it's also my job to help you create a postpartum plan, not just a birth list of wishes. And so, you know, helping prepare for that. I like to call myself a lactation champion. And so I have some certifications in lactation. And so that's a big part of what I'm educating during pregnancy, so that in the postpartum, there's a baseline to start. So the role of a doula, a birth doula, is a lot bigger than most people realize.
And when I hear you talking, it sounds like in a lot of ways you fill in the gap for families, because bringing a child into the world, bringing them home, that may for some people be it's a new experience if it's their first child, and just knowing that you're not alone.
Correct. Some people think, well, I have a midwife, I don't need a doula. Your midwife is going to be in the room to catch your baby, and then we'll rotate in and out every once in a while just to make sure things are going okay. And if things are not going well, they're going to call the midwife in to figure out the issue and remedy it, right? The midwife is actually not there with you for the whole birth, the whole laboring process. That's in a hospital birth. But when you have a home birth or a freestanding birth center birth, you might see the midwives a little bit more often. But even in those cases, they're saying, well, call your doula, have your doula come over, and then their doula will help you know when you need to go to the freestanding birth center, or your doula will let you know when it's time to call the home birth midwife to come. And so the importance of having a doula, in addition to a medical provider, I consider that importance level is really high, because we also can't expect our medical providers to do everything. Because to be honest, if we think about when was the last time I had a doctor visit, maybe they were in the room for like 15 to 20 minutes and then they went to the next patient, right? And so we can't expect the medical providers to do all the education that's needed for birth, right? Or the postpartum period. And then you also can't expect the doula to do all the education, because families need to do education on their own as well, like taking classes, like doing research that's reputable, not Dr. Google. So there's like so many layers, and so people say, "Oh, I don't need a doula. Oh, I have a black OB. I don't need a doula." I just put my head down because black providers can't save the world, right? Like, so there's this. That's a layered answer thing. Anyway, that's a layered answer. But what we do, it expands so much. You know.
And something you said, if you could talk about a little bit more, people plan to bring the child in the world, but the after that 9 months and you bring them home, you're home and there's no plan for that. And that's why you kind of step in and help them not only look at, okay, you're bringing the child into the world, but look at the big picture of what are your supports that you need once they're here.
Yeah, I've had many parents of color say, I just don't want to die. So I hired you because I don't want to die. Okay. Because when we look at the maternal mortality and morbidity rates in our country, it is just out of control, right? And I cannot carry that whole burden, but I can help you find hopefully a birthing location and a birthing provider team that gives you a better chance of survival. I'm not the police. I'm not planning to come to your birthing location to fight the nurse and to fight the staff, because a lot of times that's what people think advocacy is. Like, well, if they say something wrong to me or if they try to do something, I'm going to like, no, you know,
step in.
It doesn't quite work that way. So really helping people, you know, as they're planning for their birth, like we want to make those important decisions. But then they'll say, I'm not using bottles, I'm not using formula. Okay, but have you taken a lactation class? Well, no. Okay, so let's do that while you're still pregnant, right? Let's talk about your feeding goals for your baby. Or let's talk about how do you plan to eat when you go home? Because in the ideal situation, you birth the baby, you take a baby home, and then you lay down for a couple weeks. And I know in America, that's like, wait, you want me to do nothing? Yes, exactly. Nothing. A whole lot, really. And I want to be horizontal more than vertical. Because sometimes people think, well, I'll sit on the couch all day. You can be on the couch, but I actually want you to lay on the couch more hours of the day that you're sitting on the couch. You know, so I'm educating on the physical body, because the weight of pregnancy is heavy on the pelvic floor, right? And if you pushed a baby out of your body, then your pelvic floor had to open so the baby can get through. Your pelvic floor needs time to heal, right? And so if we're sitting all day, the weight of our body is sitting on our pelvic floor. So it's not fully at rest to heal. And so, you know, educating people about laying more hours of the day than sitting. And then this morning, I visited someone who brought their baby home from the NICU yesterday. And it's like a triumphant time, right? Bring your baby home. And so the soup that I cooked for her today is butternut squash soup. Well, it doesn't quite taste like the ones in the restaurant because I'm using some herbs that maybe they're not using, right? So helping families understand the importance of warming the body after you have a baby is something that I'm really passionate about now, and I'm learning more about how to educate families. So I'm using turmeric and ginger and garlic because those are warming to the body, right? And helping. I know we love the ice packs. Like the ice packs is the thing to do after people push a baby out. However, warming the body is actually better than cooling the body after a baby. And so in a cultural sense, like in many cultures around the world, we're warming the body. So even just talking about that in the postpartum time is a huge difference than what people are learning other places. A client said to me recently, I only got to sleep 2 hours at a time. And I said, great. That's a healthy baby. When a newborn wakes up every 2 to 3 hours throughout the night and the day to eat, that's a healthy baby. Babies who are unable to wake up throughout the night, newborns meaning like in the first week or so, and they sleep the whole night every night, as a doula, I'm like nervous. Like that baby's probably dehydrated, or this baby may be sick, right? Because they're sleeping through the night. And so being able to help parents understand that your healthy baby wakes up every 2 to 3 hours to eat in those first weeks months, possibly, especially in the first weeks, because this is how they, we know they're getting enough nourishment. Now, don't be emailing me talking about my baby slept this many hours. I don't want to hear it, actually. I'm talking about in general.
Yes.
Like, healthy babies can wake themselves up every couple hours to eat. But a lot of parents think they don't have a good baby because their baby is not sleeping 6 to 8 hours a night. Well, honey, you got a healthy baby if they're not sleeping 6 to 8 hours a night. So as a doula, that's part of my education, right?
Yeah.
Learning to bring your baby home to have good expectations.
You sort of fill in for families that space of, I'm not sure if I know all the right things I should be asking. Mm-hmm. So you know the things that they should be asking that maybe they don't know to ask, so that they can go into the birthing experience feeling prepared, or as prepared as you can be for that experience, but knowing that, okay, I've got somebody with me that has been through births before, that knows, the right questions to ask, knows what I'm not asking and I should be. And you can have that little boost of confidence going into that experience.
The questions to ask, that is a part of what I think most doulas do, I know I do, is helping people come up with questions to ask at their next appointment based off of what they're experiencing now or what they heard in their last appointment. So some people will want to meet after an appointment, and then some people are fine to wait until we have a scheduled time to talk about their last appointment. However, if I know someone had an appointment, I will try to remember to text to say, hey, how did it go? What types of things that you talk about. So as a doula, we, in general, I would say we do help process appointments and help people get ready for them.
During the last year and a half or so, has your phone been ringing a little bit more, your email inbox filling up a bit more with people inquiring about the services that you offer? Because hospitals are right now, they're feeling the strain of COVID patients. What does this period look like for you? My business, me personally, it blew up during COVID. And I would say the last half of 2020, all of a sudden, I had this booming business that had slowly been growing over 4 years, that all of a sudden it was, oh my gosh, my head is spinning. Quit my job, my human resources job, to be full-time in birth work, because not only do I take birthing families, I also, like I said, teach a lot of childbirth education. And so balancing that with a full-time job was to the point where I was at times at work thinking about birth stuff. And it was okay, we've reached the place now that I didn't really need to transfer or transition. Right after the quarantine started, there was high levels of anxiety, right? I mean, and that's across the board in the world. But especially with pregnancy, it was just I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should still go to the hospital, So we did see a low risk birthing people who left the hospital, and a lot of out of hospital midwives loosened their restrictions a little bit about when people can transfer into their care. And then there's those who weren't low risk, so you didn't have the option to transfer. And so it's okay, so what does this look like to only have one support person? Versus before you could have whoever you wanted. Everything shifted for a while there, and virtual support is different for every family. So there were some families that's camera set up or the computer set up and you're just streaming live for hours and hours and hours. I had a couple families that only wanted to be on video when we were alone. When we weren't alone, they were on the phone. I had 2 families that only did texting. They felt great, they were really supported, and I'm thinking, I'm so glad you did. But it's your option to just continue texting, right? Yeah.
And then some people just did phone support. I remember one family being on the phone for about 3 hours while she was pushing, and thinking it was really hard to gauge when I should talk and when I shouldn't talk because I couldn't see.
Yeah.
He was a pretty quiet pusher. And so I was I don't want to talk at the wrong time. And so it was just different.
I know you're offering training too, and there really aren't enough doulas to go around when you look just at Minnesota statewide. I was recently reading an article on that, and specifically doulas of color, even just the if you want a doula of color, your options are limited where we are. And so you're doing some work to fill in the gap, offering training.
We have a lot more doulas of color than people realize, and we don't have enough. Both of those. I started a Facebook page that's Minnesota BIPOC birth workers. So that includes doulas and midwives and nurses and chiropractors or massage therapists that work with pregnant families. And so I am building that. I'm working on building that to make that bigger so that we actually do have a directory that makes it easier for families to find us. Because what I hear from families who hire me and it's not their first child, oh, I didn't know there were Black doulas the first time, so I had a white doula. She was fine, but I wish I would have known, which is part of the problem because white doulas need to start telling people, hey, I would love to be your doula. We seem like we click. However, if you wanted a doula of color, I can connect you with some, so that's not really happening.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to build that so it's easier to find us. So as far as trainings, we don't have, to my knowledge, a birth doula training that is created by, meaning the curriculum is created by and run by local people. And so this year, my teaching partner and I, the one who I teach Childbirth Ed with, we decided we're going to train people. We created a curriculum, a doula training curriculum, and we just started training people. We're not connected to any big box organizations. And I'm not saying that's bad to be connected to them, but we want to be grassroots and local. And so we are doing some bias training in that. And then, of course, this is how you be a doula type thing. This is what a doula is. This is what a doula isn't. We also have, we are showing birth videos, which is not uncommon for doula trainings, but a lot of people say they want to be a doula and they've never seen a birth before. That's okay, but that's part of your preparation. It's being comfortable. You can't be passing out, right? So showing different types of births, because a lot of people don't realize there's variations of normal, right? We think of birth as in you're in the hospital, you lay on your back, and a head comes first. Great. We love when the head comes first. But a variation of normal is when the head doesn't come first, right? And so, or like, birthing in a hospital, birthing in your home, birthing in your yard. I mean, there are people out there who go in the ocean to birth their babies. Have at it, right? And so there's just so many variations of normal, so helping people understand that. If you want to work with people in the community who are not rich and white, and married, like heterosexual married, then you need to learn about microaggression. You need to understand racism and homophobia and all of those types of things. So we're trying to bring pieces of all of that into the training to truly help people be ready to serve the community, because the community doesn't just look like me. The community doesn't just show up at the hospital and have an easy birth or a birth where they're treated properly, right? So what we're doing in our training is trying to touch on those different things, as well as this is how you start your business. Because when I took my doula training, and I hear a lot of people say it, there was no business training. I mean, they told me to have a calendar and I should take about 4 people a month, but that's, so that's built into it as well.
And how, a couple of things that I wanted you to elaborate on. When you mentioned this came on your radar as a possible career path, you had gone to assist another friend just with her birth, just to be support. Right. To somebody that's listening and they say, oh, I've got a good girlfriend, they can come in and do that. I'll be fine. I don't need a doula. But your good girlfriend may not know all of the things that being support in a pregnancy might entail. Right?
True. And we want your good girlfriend to support you. Yeah. I also highly suggest getting a trained professional, because being a doula at a birth is more than being present. A big part of what we do is being present. We're going to be present. I'm going to hold space for you. And
so like when you were there for your friend, you were just like space and support.
I was present. She knew I loved her. I know she loved me, and yes, we rocked that out, right?
Yes, but this is a little bit more than just love that you're putting into this, into the role of doula.
How your baby is laying in your body can strongly affect how your laboring and birthing process goes. maternal fetal positioning. And so, does your good girlfriend know about that? Right? Like, if you are feeling something in a certain part of your body, what are some tips and tricks we can do to alleviate that? Now, tell people all the time, I don't make any promises. I'm not magic. I wish I was, but I'm not, however, I grab my pelvis because it's always near me. I love using my pelvis. I call it my little friend, but I'm always teaching families, whether they're my client or not, about the pelvis. Like, where is your baby in there? And this back here, this is the occiput. And so we're always talking about where's the baby's occiput. So when we're saying acronyms and birthing spaces, and it's just going over everyone's head, it's good to have someone who understands what's happening, right? And I'm not saying you can't have a birth that you feel good about that goes well without trained birth support. I'm just saying when there's trained birth support, when things come up, we generally understand and have suggestions, right? So, like, why am I asking someone to do a lunge right now versus why didn't I ask them to do a squat, right? I have a reason for that. If I'm asking them to do a lunge, their baby is probably asynclitic. All those words right there, right? So I understand what those words mean. If the doctor says, okay, we're going to do AROM at 12, I'll be back. Then now I can have a conversation with my client about what that means and help them decide if they want that or not. But people don't know they have a right to their body. And advocacy is a big part of that too, right? We're constantly talking about advocacy during the birthing time. We're constantly troubleshooting, I don't want a fetal scalp electrode. Okay, well, let's talk about why you don't want it. And let's talk about reasons why they're suggesting it. Maybe some people need a fetal scalp electrode. Most people don't. And so being able to help troubleshoot that outside of feelings and emotions, or what I did in my birth. So you don't need Pitocin because I didn't need Pitocin, and Pitocin made everything worse. No, some people need Pitocin. Not most people, but some people do, right? And so having that person who has the education to help you make decisions is really helpful.
And all births aren't the same. So what somebody needed in theirs, someone else may not need, and vice versa. And making decisions based on someone else's experience may not be the best decision for you.
And that's what a lot of people are doing, actually. And so when I teach, I talk about you're not a trash can, right? And you need to stop being other people's trash can. And they look at me like, what are you talking about? Every time you let someone tell you their horror story, you're their trash can. They're dumping their trash into you. And then what you don't realize is you actually take their trash into your birth. And so you get into your birth and you're declining things you actually need because they said that it wasn't good for them. And we see this over and over and over, where I've become the trash can, and at my birth, I'm the trash can. And I'm like, every time something comes up, I'm like looking in the can to see, well, what did they say about that? Right. And so as a doula, I can help navigate that. Hopefully in your pregnancy, we can remove the trash, right? But then things come up. Birth can be triggering. And I say a lot of times, sometimes I'm like a little bit of a therapist during birth. Well, let's talk about that. How do you feel about that? What do you think about that? And then your body can let that thing go enough to progress in your birthing time. Sometimes birth slows down or stops because of what's happening mentally or emotionally. So let's deal with that thing, right? Let's not ignore it. Let's talk about it, and then let's move forward. But if I'm so emotionally attached that I can't detach to support you properly, then I'm not actually being helpful. And so some of our loved ones, they can be that person that can detach enough emotionally to be supportive. And sometimes it's like, well, this is the fight when we don't need a fight. So that's some of the difference.
And one of the things that listening to you, it kind of made me think about it when I'm on a plane. Like, part of what provides me with comfort is knowing that the flight attendant, if she doesn't look panicked on her face, that I feel okay. If she's not worried, I'm not worried. So the fact that you're in the room, sometimes some of the things that you can hear from a doctor, or some of the medical terms, or some of the language language. If you're just in there with your friends and family with no medical understanding of any of those things, you might be sitting there like a deer in the headlights freaking out. But it's like, if the doula's not freaking out, then maybe I'm okay not to freak out. I just need her to explain to me what I just heard.
Yep, exactly what happens. I like to tell people doulas are in charge of the atmosphere. And what I mean by that is, when I go into my doula voice, and we're here, and if I can stay here, which I'm really good at staying here, then whatever I say, because my client trusts me, we can work through it, right? But if I'm like this and like, oh my gosh, like what? You did what? What does she need? Oh, I don't, that doesn't work, right? And so when I'm in my doula voice, we can do anything. I've been in emergency situations. I've been traumatized by things, and my client didn't know I was traumatized. And then when I go to their home in the postpartum period and we're debriefing their birth, I don't talk about my trauma or how I felt about it. I just let them talk about their experience, and I've had people say from births that I felt traumatized, well, I wasn't traumatized because I had you. And I'm thinking like, ooh, I'm so glad I didn't make it about me. Yes. Because if I would have made it about me and reacted in the moment, then this client would have not been able to mentally and emotionally handle the situation, right? And that doesn't mean like, oh, Rhonda's so great, she helped the person not be traumatized. No, Rhonda was doing her job, and just doing her job, the client was able to process. Now, that doesn't mean if you have a doula, you won't ever experience trauma, because that is not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying, as a doula, it's my job not to add to that. As a doula, it's my job to not cry harder than my client is crying, right? Have I cried at births before? Yes. But I can cry with my client. I can be in the moment with them, but I'm not causing or triggering or making something worse. And I think that's important. We always talk to new doulas about is it's not about you. And if you can't realize that, then you should just do therapy before you start doula work. Like, you can do your training, but before you start taking clients, we talk in our training, get therapy. It's okay, right? And then maybe keep doing therapy throughout your doula work too, because sometimes we need to talk to somebody. And so it's just really important that I'm not causing trauma, no matter what the situation is.
And can you talk a little bit about, if someone is watching and they're wondering, is this line of work right for me? What are some of the qualities, characteristics of someone that would be a good fit for this kind of work?
Wow, that's a question I don't think I've ever quite thought about in that way. I think you have to be a good listener. I know that. You need to be a good listener, because I need to hear what you're saying in order to help you process it and help you make decisions, versus you start talking and then I've already thought of something and that's not even the direction you're going, and now I'm not being helpful. So being a good listener, being flexible and adaptable. So no matter what's happening, you got to flex. You got to move with that flow, because not only do I need to adapt, I need to help my client adapt. For example, if we were expecting a vaginal birth and now we need a surgical birth, then how do I help prep them right now? I don't have time to think about it. How do I prep them right now? How do I help them know they're not a failure right now? Right? And so that flexible, adaptable, I was planning a water birth and now I'm birthing in the bed, or I really wanted an epidural. The baby came too fast and I'm mad I didn't have my epidural. That's a real thing. So flexible and adaptable, being able to listen, being able to make it not about yourself, whatever that characteristic is, we'll just make that one. How do you not make things about you, not be full of yourself, because you will cause harm. Another thing is being a learner. And so if you notice, what I am saying is birthing person and birthing family, pregnant family, because not everyone who carries and births a child considers themselves a mom, or not considers himself, identifies as a mom, right? And so if I'm talking to someone who I know identifies as a mom, then I'm going to say mom. If I'm talking to a group of people and I'm not sure, I'm going to ask pronouns or use the phrases birthing people. I might use multiple phrases, but I want to make sure that I'm not assuming that everyone in here is heterosexual, or everyone in here identifies with the body they were born in, right? And so learning, I had to learn that. Look, this little church girl from a Black community did not understand any of that. And I'm still growing in that. And I'm currently taking an online training to continue growing in that. And so being a learner, you know, that's just one aspect of learning, but it's learning anything, learning more about fetal position, learning more about GBS or Group B strep, learning more about any aspect of birth, right? Continually being able to take trainings. The original doula training you take is your intro, but you need to continue education is so important.
And talk about if someone's trying to find a doula and figure out if one is right for them, how important is certification or is certified doula in making that choice? 0.
That's how much weight you put on the word certification.
Okay.
So this is what I do think is important. I think people should be trained, right? A lot of the things that I've been saying, I had no idea until I started doing all these different trainings. So I think people should ask about their training and not consider training from a big box organization better than other things, right? To be certified costs money. And so you have to pay different levels of money, and most organizations you have to recertify and keep paying fees every year and every few years. And that's not feasible for everyone. And so I don't believe certification makes you more, I don't know, I can't think of the word I want, but certification doesn't define a doula. You should ask about training. Ask about their training. You know, there's certain trainings these days that people really like, and so they'll ask you if you've been trained in this thing. Most people don't ask me if I'm certified. I am certified because in the state of Minnesota, we have Medicaid reimbursement. There's so many hoops you have to jump through just to be on the Minnesota Department of Health list in order to receive Medicaid reimbursement. And being certified by a certain number of organizations is mandated for that. And so I'm keeping certification because of that. I don't think you need to be certified to be a good doula. It doesn't define you.
So in some ways, is the financial aspect a barrier for communities of color and more people entering this field of work?
Yes, I think finances is a barrier in all aspects, right? And so we see it in this as well. We don't have enough trainers who do scholarships. So that's one thing. We don't have enough trainers who have sliding scale for people groups. My website for training is communityawarebirthworker.com. And so Heather and I have decided that we would have a sliding fee for training, for people to take our training, and then also offer payment plans. And so that is important to offer that so that people can. There are scholarships out there for certain things, but not enough for doula training. I crowdsource a lot. So a few times a year, I'll try to raise money. I did a campaign at the end of the summer to just collect money for BIPOC birth workers continuing education or whatever they need as a part of their birth work. It is definitely a barrier to get certified, to be trained. Some organizations, you have to have like 7 or 8 books you have to read. And I don't think it's bad to want people to read books, but then that's another cost if they don't find them in the library. So there's just a lot of things that can hinder people. Well, maybe I shouldn't be a doula if I don't have the money for XYZ. You know, but then there's also, I can hear it right now. People will say, people spend money on what they want to spend money on. And yes, I think that people can try to save up towards something they want, you know, doula training or even hiring a doula, right? Put that as a part of your baby shower thing, or whatever. So there's ways to find the money, but I also don't want us to assume that because someone is saying they don't have money for doula training doesn't mean that maybe they have it hidden somewhere, right?
And all excellent information. Before I let you go, can you tell people how they can find you? And then finally, offer some words to folks that are trying to decide, is this right for me or not? How do you want them to feel when they're in a space like yours?
Yeah, I'm going to add on to that last one. How do I want you to feel when you're attending a birth? I think it's important for people to know that you don't need rose-colored glasses because they don't work. And so understanding that in the birth space, it can be very toxic for doulas, right? And then there are some providers who feel it's toxic when a doula's in the room too. So that it can go both ways. So let's be honest about that. But understanding that some hospital staff are very territorial, and being in that space can feel really awkward for us as doulas, especially brown doulas. And so it's important to say that you can't have rose-colored glasses because of that point, but also you can't have rose-colored glasses about our statistics in this country when it comes to birth, and that don't come into birth work if you don't understand those statistics and how you can help in those situations. How do I want you to feel in my space? Like if you came to my training or one of a mentoring session that I'm doing or a class I'm teaching, I want you to laugh, first of all. You didn't really get to see that side of me in this interview, but I'm real silly and I like to tell jokes, even during the birthing time. There's a period of time where I can still tell jokes, and then I know when it's no longer funny. Nothing's going to be funny after this point during birth. But I want you to laugh if you're in one of my classes. I was teaching a class on Tuesday and they were laughing so much, and I just kept saying, well, you're going to remember that. Well, you're going to remember that. And so laughter, I want people to be comfortable. I want people to know that they are accepted and they're welcome and they're not going to be judged. And sometimes people's lifestyles, no matter what that looks like, they can feel shame, or maybe they don't feel shame, but other people always try to guilt them into being shameful. But I want them to feel like I'm a safe person, that this is a safe place. And so that's a big part of, that's just who I am as a person. So I don't have to turn that on when I teach or train, but I am cognizant of who's in the room and do I need to change some vocabulary? Do I need to tell more jokes, right? And if you're not funny, don't tell jokes because then it falls flat. But do I need to tell more jokes? Do I need to be more silly? Do I need to be more serious? Do I need to tell more statistics? So I'm always paying attention to what's happening in that space so that I can meet the needs of the people that are there. So I want people to feel like, yep, the space is for you. Even if I'm completely different than some of the other people in the space, that I can still be in the space and feel safe. And so that's really important. And it's important to me as a Black woman, but it's also important to me as an educator and a supporter of families. And like I said, I call myself a lactation champion. Like I want to champion the families. I want to champion what their hopes are and who they are, and help them to feel like they're being heard, they're being respected, and there's someone who will fight for me. If you said in the middle of your birth, I want a cesarean, I'm done, then I'm going to champion that. Like, well, we're going to have a conversation to see where's that coming from? But if that's really what you want, well, then you have a right to have that cesarean, right? And so having a doula is not about, oh, you have to have an unmedicated birth in a house. No, it's about that full support of you and who you are and what you're hoping for. And so I want to always be the type of doula that people can get to that. And then if they don't feel like I'm meeting that need, I would hope they would tell me while they're still pregnant so that I can adjust. Because if I don't know, I can't adjust. And I don't necessarily know. You can't always pick up on people's signals that they're not happy. And so I want to be able to have those conversations. So being that safe place is what I hope people experience with me. And then with anybody that I refer them to, because I can't teach everybody because I don't always have space. So then I will refer to other people as well.
And before I let you go, tell everyone where they can find you.
You can find me all over social media. If you are in the Twin Cities, in Minnesota, and you are a birth worker of color or a person of color who works with pregnant families or postpartum families, then you can go on Facebook, and the group is MN BIPOC Birth Workers. MN BIPOC Birth Workers. Please answer the questions, because if I don't know you, I'm not going to let you in. If I don't know that you should be in the group. And then my website and also my social media names, Oily Doula MN for Minnesota. So oilydoulamn.com, and I'm Oily Doula MN on social media. I'm more active on Instagram than Facebook.
Okay, good to know. Thank you so much for joining me today, Rhonda. And hopefully, if you're watching, if you ever had any questions about the work that doulas do, whether or not it's the right option for you, hopefully we kind of introduced you in this past hour to some of the things you may want to know, some of the questions you might have, how they step in and fill in the gap during your birthing experience, and how they provide some of that emotional support as you navigate what for some people may be a totally new experience, especially if you're going through pregnancy for the first time. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.
Bye.